Hey everybody, and welcome back to another video. In this video, I really want to talk about one of the most important things that you're going to need when applying for your first BI role, and that is a very strong business intelligence resume. Now, in my current role as a hiring manager, I probably review close to 100 resumes a year, and that also includes the resumes that people send to me on LinkedIn just asking for my 2 cents. So everything in this video is just my own opinion as someone who reviews a lot of resumes in analytics on a regular basis. There's a very wide range of approaches that you can take to having a really strong BI resume. I see lots of people doing really cool creative things that definitely help get my attention as a hiring manager. And then I also see people making a lot of what I consider to be pretty common, easily avoidable mistakes that are definitely a turn on and definitely don't help their chances in landing an interview for the role to which they're applying. So in this video, I just wanted to run through, 10 questions that I get from people on LinkedIn about their resumes and how to make a stronger BI resume, and just give you my 2 cents on some of these very common resume topics. So the first question is, how important is the resume for landing my first BI job, really? So obviously, your resume is crucial for landing your first BI role. And your resume is often the very first touch point that recruiters and hiring managers have with you, with your background, to help them understand who you are, where you come from, and what your professional journey has looked like up to the moment that you're applying for that job. So a great BI resume really needs to hook the reader's attention right away without overwhelming or boring them. And the key to doing that, is to have a very strong BI resume that puts your best foot forward right out of the gate by listing, your most valuable BI skill sets. You definitely want to make a strong selling point for your skills as something that's going to be a credit to whatever company you're applying to. And also make sure that, front and center, you have a very strong portfolio that clearly demonstrates, your skills and your maturity as a BI developer, something that just very strongly demonstrates your work. And I'm going to talk about this more in just a moment, but the key to a successful resume is to make sure that you keep things, very short and focused on the specific role to which you're applying. Remember, resumes do not earn you jobs. They earn you interviews. People don't often get hired just on the strength of their resume. A resume is something that a recruiter or a hiring manager looks at to try to make the evaluation as to whether or not you're someone that they want to talk to and get to know a little bit more about. And in a lot of BI or data roles, whether or not they want to bring you in for a technical interview to make sure that your skills really are legitimate and that they align to the specific role to which you're applying. So you need to focus your energy on building a laser-focused and attention-grabbing resume that just makes someone want to have additional conversations with you. I personally read every single resume that comes across my desk for any role that I happen to be hiring for. And the most common reasons that I reject resumes is that the candidate either does not list relevant skill sets at all that I requested. Like, they might list a bunch of technical skills, but they're not the technical skills that I listed in my job requisition. Or they list so many skills without, surfacing the skills that are really core strengths. Sometimes I get candidates that it seems like they've done everything, and maybe every type of data and IT role imaginable. And obviously those people are really, really impressive, but it's really hard for me to figure out, how a person who can do everything fits into a very, specifically focused role. I have to do a lot of guesswork to figure out, well, maybe this person is good enough at the things that I'm looking for. I might end up interviewing some of those people because it looks like they can do anything, but honestly, a shorter resume that has, skills and information tailored to the specific job that I'm hiring for is probably stronger than listing everything under the sun. And then another common reason why I have to reject resumes is that they list non-relevant skills that don't apply to the job at all, and they don't give me any kind of context explaining, obviously these people thought that they had something that they could give to this role, or they wouldn't have applied. But they leave me to try to guess what those skill sets are. I'm going to talk about this later on, but sometimes a cover letter is a great place for you to explain why, even though your resume might appear to be a poor fit for a job, it isn't necessarily. Maybe you have a lot to offer, and this is why. The next common question that I get from people is looking for specific recommendations on listing specific skills on a resume. And I mean, let's face it, business intelligence is a technical field, and if your resume doesn't list any specific technical fields, then you're probably in trouble. But the skills that you list in your resume are important, and they should be appropriate and relevant to the job description to which you're applying. Ideally, your resume might even reference a couple of brief examples of how you applied specific technical skills to different business problems or to different situations in your life or with past employers. But you don't have to worry too much about covering every single relevant skill, even the very small, very tiny technical things, because those are also things that can be surfaced in interviews once you're invited to have conversations with the hiring team. So remember, the goal of a resume is to land an interview. It's not to get the job itself. Once again, I'm going to be a broken record here, but I've never hired someone based strictly on the strength of their resume, and I don't expect to ever do that in the future. So what you should be careful not to do, however, is something that I regrettably see people do all the time, and that is to overshare skills just for the purpose of padding your resume. If you are, looking deep within yourself and Python is not my strength, and especially if the job description doesn't mention Python at all, maybe you don't need to mention Python. Or maybe you just, become comfortable really telling people that you have exposure to Python as a skill that you're learning, but you would consider yourself maybe a novice or just a learner of Python at the moment. I mean, if, to be a contrarian to that point, if you're someone who's amazing at Python and you're applying to a BI or a data role that doesn't mention Python, then go ahead and mention it. If you have a core strength that is related to, the industry that you're applying to, BI in this instance, and, you want to surface to a potential hiring manager that you have additional skills where you're really good that would be a real asset to that team, that's completely different. Where I struggle sometimes is when people, sell me skills in their resume that they don't actually have or that aren't nearly as refined as they would have me believe based on their resume. Trust me, none of us are good at everything. I personally am terrible at Python. That's why I don't talk a whole lot about Python in my resume, and I tend to be very upfront with people that hey, I don't really have a lot of applied situations where I need Python in my current job, and I haven't had any situations like that in the past, so I haven't really had a lot of opportunities to develop my Python skills, or I need to, really grow my Python skills. And most of the time that's fine. No one who is interviewing you for almost any technical position in business intelligence or data science is going to expect you to be perfect. None of us are. And there are so many different things for us to learn that no one knows at all. So, focus on keeping your resume as short and focused as possible, instead of wasting valuable resume real estate talking about skills that you may feel that you really don't have. And also, one funny story: if you are applying for a Power BI focused job, I'm begging you, just tell me that you know DAX. Don't list every single DAX function that you've ever used. I'm not even joking. I have had resumes that were 5 or 6 pages long because people, I literally had individuals list bullets for 50 or 60 different DAX functions. It's great that you know all and all selected, but just tell me you know DAX. Everything else can come out of the interviews, the technical interviews. I'm really not concerned that you've listed every single one in your resume. And in fact, it can look a little bit amateurish if I'm being honest, even though I know that everybody who does that, their heart is in the right place. So just focus on keeping things as short and sweet as possible. Another really common question that I get is, how long should my resume be? And obviously, there are a ton of opinions out there on this topic, but I am a very strong believer that almost no resume needs to be longer than 2 or 3 pages. Unfortunately, I routinely get resumes that are 6 pages, 8 pages, 10 pages. Some experts will tell you that a resume absolutely has to be 1 page, no exceptions. I don't agree with that, especially in more technical areas where you need to talk about your skill sets, your employment history, your certifications, which are very common in technical industries. To me, it's a no-brainer that, a 1-page resume is the exception and not the rule. Most of the resumes that I get are about 3 pages long on average. That's totally fine. I don't bat an eye at receiving a 2 or 3 page resume. I do bat an eye at receiving a 10-page resume, which unfortunately does happen more often than I would like. But my professional resume is 2 pages long. Most of the strongest candidates I interview, their resumes are two or 3 pages long. By the time I get to the 4th or 5th page of a resume, if I'm being honest, I kind of start skimming. Mostly because a lot of the experience that is on those pages tends to be 10, 15, 20 years old by that point. So the first page of your resume is easily the most important. It's where you need to make sure that you've listed all of the most relevant skills for the job to which you're applying. And you definitely should make sure that you have your portfolio front and center, easy for a hiring manager like me to spot, identify, click into, and start exploring. I mean, again, every strong resume, especially in 2023, has a portfolio. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit more later in this video. But anything that you have at your disposal that could hook a potential recruiter or a hiring manager and make them want to invite you in for a larger conversation with themselves or with their team, that should go on the first page. Other pages can kind of delve into, items of smaller interest or maybe things that are just a little bit more unique to you. Things like older employment history, your volunteer work, your hobbies, education, publications, things like that. If you start running out of real estate on your first page, it's okay to have a second or third page that goes into some of the more non-technical attributes of your resume that are important, but maybe not specifically important for the job to which you're applying. So I've just talked about, how important it is to make sure that you have a very strong first page in your resume. But overall, how should I structure my resume? And first of all, I definitely don't think that there's one correct way to structure a resume. I've restructured and reorganized my own resume probably 20 or 30 times in the last 5 years. About every 3 to 4 months, I hate the way that my resume is organized, and I start moving things around, or I'm just like, I feel like this needs to be higher. I can move this down. So I definitely have not found the best way to structure a resume. So it's, a little bit hard for me to prescribe too much to you, other than to tell you you shouldn't get too hung up on the perfect way to structure a resume. So let's focus on what to list first so that you can, just to help you land your BI interview. And as I just said, first page of your BI resume, easily the most important. So you're definitely going to want to have your name, your contact information, a link to your portfolio, all of that front and center so that everybody knows who you are. And then an objective statement can be very helpful on the first page of your resume if you have an interesting objective. If your objective is just to get my first BI job, it's probably not a very interesting objective. Your objective probably matches every other resume that's coming in for, especially a more entry-level BI job. But if your objective, is more specific, for example, maybe you're trying to transition from a role where you instructed high school students in advanced mathematics, and now you're looking to move into a corporate role where you have more hands-on time with complex data and quantitative analysis. Well, now you've really piqued my curiosity. That's an objective statement that I'm interested in, and it's also a good objective because it gives me a little bit of context for maybe why your resume doesn't have clear previous BI or analytics or data exposure, but it's also helping me see you, despite your academic or teaching background, as someone who could probably thrive in a corporate data environment. Your first page should also start to list your, what relevant employment experience you have, and definitely you want to make sure that you're always listing your more recent employment first. Don't make me comb to other pages of your resume to try to find, what you're doing today or what your last job was. Jobs that you had 10, 15, 20 years ago, the farther back in the past that they are, probably the less relevant they are for whatever job you're applying for today. And so those can just be summarized very briefly on subsequent pages. If you don't have relevant employment experience because you're applying for either your first BI role or you're pivoting careers into a BI position, then use this space to list your relevant certifications and classes. The point here is not to bury the lead. Whether you are or aren't a BI professional today, you definitely want to try to make a recruiter and a hiring manager see you as someone who has potential and someone who, again, might be interesting to talk to. And then, once you're in an interview and you have the opportunity to sell your case in person to the people on the hiring panel, so much changes for you. Your odds of landing that position go up so much if you can just get your foot in the door to actually talk to someone. I'm not saying that it's going to work out every single time. I'm not saying that you won't have heartbreak and rejection, but getting to that first phone call or Zoom interview or an actual in-office interview, you've already drastically improved your chances. You aren't going to get a position until you get to talk to somebody in person. So you want to make sure that you're always putting your best foot forward so that, people who you are hoping will hire you don't overlook what attractive qualities you do have. Is it okay to include non-relevant experience, especially if it's all that I've got? So if you're looking for your first BI role, chances are that your resume has a lot of non-relevant work experience, and I have absolutely been there. In 2014, after I completed my MBA, and I was trying to land my first job, not BI job, not data science job, first job, it was extremely deflating for me, feeling like I had so much potential, but having no one take me seriously because honestly, my resume sucked. I didn't have a great resume when I was wrapping up my MBA. And my solution was to go and work in a call center with 2 master's degrees for a little bit more than a year. And I hated my life at the time. I hated working in a call center. Worst job I've ever had. But at least I got my foot in the door with a company where I was able to work hard, prove myself, and network with a great analytics team at my first employer. And they eventually gave me a shot. And now I've been working in analytics for almost a decade. And so even though I hated that first job, I still think that I got extraordinarily lucky. And, my path into a BI role may not be appropriate for everyone. But if your resume is full of non-relevant work experience, the chances are you're going to have a frustrating road to landing your first BI role. I don't want to sugarcoat anything and tell you, no, you're going to have an easy go of it if your resume is exceptional. But if you're coming into a BI role from another career, maybe an exceptional resume just isn't in the cards for you. I have nothing but admiration for people who are trying to make that pivot from a non-data job into a data job. But yeah, it's going to be so much more difficult for you, unfortunately. Your resume is going to be in a pile full of other resumes that might check every single box for that role. However, that does not mean that you should give up or scrub everything out of your resume. It just means that you're going to have to take some extra steps to sort of contextualize that lack of experience for any potential recruiters or hiring managers who might be reviewing your resume in hopes that they'll take a chance on someone with your background as opposed to a more qualified candidate on paper. So if you're pivoting careers, what technical skills did you learn in previous jobs? What communication skills or leadership skills are you bringing with you into a BI role that other candidates might not have? Why do you want this role so badly that someone should take a chance on you as opposed to someone who, like I said, checks every single qualification for the specific job that you're applying to? Trust me, this approach is not going to save you from rejection. My wife, Nina, even though she just landed her first BI role a couple of weeks ago, it took her about 6 to 12 months of very, very hard studying and applying and trying to refine her resume before she found a role that works. And chances are people who read your resume, when you're a newcomer and your resume just isn't quite up to the standards of some of the more technical resumes or applicants who are applying, someone might have a lot of sympathy for you and someone might think, man, this person really looks interesting and I would love to talk to them. But they're still going to be forced to hire someone else who's a better fit for that role. And it's just part of it. But if you take steps like writing a cover letter or taking, additional effort in your resume to sort of, make the case for why someone should take a chance on you, even though your resume is not quite as technical or polished, for a BI role as some others out there. Then you're still going to improve your odds in the long run. And eventually you might find that one position where they've been looking for a great BI fit for a long time and they just have had a lackluster candidate pool. And you might find a hiring manager who is finally willing to take a risk on training and helping someone who is just hungry to learn and prove themselves. It does happen. It happens all the time. But, if you do have a resume that's full of non-relevant experience, that road to landing that job might just take a little bit longer and a lot of effort. But I'm totally confident that you can do it. And that's actually a great transition to the next important resume question, and that is, should I write a cover letter at all? And so, generally speaking, if your resume already checks all the boxes for a role, especially a BI role, you probably don't need a cover letter. I think it's probably been 5 years or so since I wrote my last cover letter. However, like resumes, I read every single cover letter that anybody submits for the roles that I'm hiring. And they can be a really useful platform to help a recruiter or hiring manager understand more about you and your specific background and kind of what you're looking for in a job. Very seldom do I read resumes where people really are very clear to me about why they want this position or why they want to work for my company or why they want to work for me. Most resumes are just sort of a laundry list of technical skills. So cover letters can be kind of a cheat in that it can almost be like you're having an interview with the hiring manager without even actually getting called in for an interview yet. So while I'm going to say that, I personally haven't written a cover letter in a long time, and don't necessarily anticipate writing a lot of cover letters in the future, if you're someone who is pivoting careers or if you're someone who's just trying to find an analytics role, don't underestimate the value of a cover letter. They obviously add a little extra time to your application process, of course, but if you're concerned that your resume is too weak to land you an interview, or if you just think, I really think that I could land this interview if the hiring manager just had a little extra context and information about me, then, maybe that's your best chance to state your case. Do I need to list my educational background, GPA, etc.? So let me start by saying very rarely do I receive a resume in which the candidate does not list their degrees and where they obtained them. I have always listed, where I obtained my bachelor's degree, my master's degree, and my MBA, and I probably always will. But I also don't think that this part of your resume probably carries as much weight in 2023 as it might have a few years ago. In 2023, I'm more concerned about your skill sets and your portfolio. A lot of the jobs that I hire do require a bachelor's and a master's degree, and as long as you have those, I really don't care where you went to college. I don't even necessarily care about what type of degree you have. As long as you can prove to me that you can kick ass in Power BI or Tableau or something like that, I really don't care if your degree is in, insert stereotypically worthless degree here. I'm not going to call out specifics in case you have that degree. I don't want you to feel bad about your college degree. Mine's in international relations. On paper, probably not the best degree for a data job, but it hasn't hurt me at all. Once I got my foot in the door, I've had a very successful analytics and business intelligence career. So absolutely, someone with any degree can make a go at this. But at the end of the day, like I said, the only thing that really matters to BI recruiters and hiring managers is that you can perform the technical aspects of the job. It doesn't matter if you went to Harvard. If you did go to Harvard, and you can do the job, that's obviously fantastic as long as you can still build a great BI tool. If the job description lists a master's degree, that's a box you're going to want to make sure that you checked, but don't feel bad about the institution where you obtained said master's degree. In my own opinion, things like your GPA also become increasingly less relevant the more time that goes by since your graduation. So if you're transitioning from university to your first BI role, maybe it might be appropriate to list your GPA and appropriate classes, but honestly, I've never paid much attention to GPAs listed on any resumes that I review. At the end of the day, I just want to know that you can do the job. And, I want to know that you have the prerequisite degree level that I'm looking for, but I honestly glance and immediately forget about where you obtained your degree and, what your GPA was. One other thing that I want to comment on is I absolutely don't care about your extracurricular activities from college or university. It's all great and it's a part of your journey. But if you were captain of the football team, you don't need to tell me that in your resume for a BI job. Oftentimes when people list like athletic accomplishments from college, they're usually trying to imply, some kind of leadership skills from that role. But, that's also stuff that you can feel free to state your case on that or make those claims in an interview. All of that stuff is totally interesting about you. I played soccer into college. It definitely, helped me meet a lot of different people, kind of taught me discipline. I think I could make the case for athletics being insanely helpful in making me the professional that I am today. But when you just list it on a resume, all I see is that you played football, you made a lot of tackles. I don't have any additional context for that. So you can probably leave the extracurricular stuff out and then just talk about it if you have an opening in your interview. Nowadays I have a lot of people who are coming to me with various data science and SQL and business intelligence certifications, and they want to know I should list those on my resume, right? Like I worked hard for these. And, generally speaking, yeah, certifications are absolutely fine to list on your resume. Like, why wouldn't you list, something like that you worked hard for? But I am going to say something controversial now, and that is just don't lose sight of the fact that most data certifications that you get online are absolutely worthless financially. Before you put my head on a spike, I'm not saying that doing the certifications is a waste of time at all, unless you just clicked through all of the videos and just sped through the course so that you could put a certification stamp on your resume and you didn't learn anything. Then that was a waste of time and the certification's worthless. But there are a lot of great companies out there with amazing instructors who offer certifications, and the certifications are fine. I think you should list them on the resume. Just know that if you list a Power BI certification on your resume, a hiring manager like me is very likely to ask about it, and the expectations are even higher that you're going to be able to prove yourself and prove that you have the skills that you say you're certified in. So while I may not place a whole lot of value in the specific certifications themselves, the skills that they teach, especially when they're taught by really competent instructors, are invaluable. But at the end of the day, the certification is just a piece of paper. That's why I'm saying it's worthless. It's the skills that your future employer needs. It's your skills that are the reason why someone's going to want to hire you. And it's the skills that you get from those certifications that are hopefully going to help you make, a couple of really strong portfolio pieces to sort of sell your case in your resume to get someone to want to talk to you and want to have a conversation about what your future career with a company might look like. Will anyone know if I plagiarize my resume? And so, this is something that I definitely wanted to talk about in this video because I've been consistently surprised by how often this comes up. But you would be amazed at how often I receive resumes that are literally just copy and pasted from the internet. One of my favorite stories to share from my time reviewing resumes for various BI roles is that about 3 years ago, I was literally reviewing resumes for a role, and I had 2 candidates submit verbatim and stylistically, formatting and everything, they submitted the exact same resume, just with the names and contact information at the top swapped out. And so, what do I do with those 2 candidates? One candidate's resume may be completely legitimate, but obviously the other candidate, whoever that may be, has stolen the other person's resume. And so what am I forced to do but not interview either candidate? Which is just another reason why it's particularly annoying when I'm reading a resume that has just been copied from some other resume, because I may end up, making a poor judgment on the wrong candidate, on an innocent party. So please don't copy and paste entire resumes or even bullets from resumes from the internet. Your resume is my chance to actually get to know a little bit about you. And when I receive these Frankenstein resumes that, read like they were written by 3 or 4 different people, I feel like I didn't actually learn anything genuine about you, which is a big problem for me since, you would be someone that I'm hypothetically hoping to join my team and work under me. If your resume is just a hodgepodge of bullets that you copied from different other resumes, then I feel like I'm hiring or interviewing a total stranger. And don't get me wrong, things like this almost always backfire in the technical interview as well when you're not able to answer any of the technical questions. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that every resume that I've received with copy and pasted bullets, that person didn't know what they were talking about. Sometimes those people are exceptional candidates. But it just doesn't do you any favors if I discover that elements of your resume were plagiarized. One of the things that I love most about the industries of business intelligence, data science, analytics, is how international it is and how, I routinely get to meet people from all over the world just because of how many people around the world are trying to make it in business intelligence and data science. And accordingly, I suspect that the reason that I receive a lot of plagiarized resumes, and I'm totally just guessing here, is because a lot of the people who are applying for these roles, anticipate that they're going to have to work in the English language, even though English might be their second or third language. And if that is the case, I'm absolutely sympathetic. And I'll also go on to say that I try not to ignore candidates who have solid fundamentals, strong portfolio pieces, and who demonstrate that they're very capable and driven and hungry to learn just because of a few typos or grammatical mistakes in their resume. Again, we're none of us perfect. Typos, grammatical issues, things like that can always be fixed in Power BI reports prior to publishing those reports. So if someone sends me a very clean, polished, short resume that unfortunately has a few grammatical issues, I am not going to hold it against those candidates, especially if I understand that they are applying for a job in their second or third language. Personally, I think that that's a strength. I find that to be astonishing. As poor as the other languages, as poor as I am at the other languages that I speak, I can't even imagine applying for a job, writing a resume, going through technical interviews in a language that isn't my first language. So it's much more important to me that the resumes you're presenting are authentic and your own, and that they're not copied from the internet, than to be absolutely flawless grammatically. Again, that's all stuff that can be fixed, on the job through peer review and, by whoever hires you, evaluating the tools that you're about to publish and the language that you're using before you actually publish them. So please, submit resumes that are uniquely yours. The last question that I want to address in this video is, what is the biggest mistake that I see professionals make when applying to BI jobs in 2023? And that's a pretty easy question for me to answer, and that is receiving BI resumes in 2023 that do not have a portfolio. A few years ago, at least in applying for the jobs that I've been posting, in other words, applying for my jobs, you definitely could have gotten away with this. But that is changing so quickly, thanks to companies like NoviPro, Maven Analytics, Tableau Public. I'm sure I'm missing a bunch of other companies who just make it so easy to host a portfolio, even of screenshots online that you can share with potential employers where they can see examples of your BI work, your data visualization, your data storytelling. Nowadays, there's just not much excuse to not have a portfolio included with your resume to present some very clear examples and demonstration of your work. Honestly, if I were hiring for an entry-level BI role and I had one candidate with 2 years of very clear BI experience but no portfolio, and another candidate who had, maybe no experience whatsoever but a bunch of certifications, 6 months of, applied learning, and a strong portfolio with maybe 3 concrete and impressive examples of what they can do, it'd probably be hard for me to not kind of lean in the direction of the person with less experience but demonstrated accomplishments and skills than the person who tells me they're good. At the very least, I think that I would probably have to interview both candidates to make that evaluation. So on the subject of portfolios, that also brings up another question, and that is, how many examples should I have in my BI portfolio? And I'm going to approach this from a couple of different lenses here. Personally, I think that if you have a portfolio with just 2 or 3 strong examples, that would be enough to cause me to want to talk to you, to want to bring you in for an interview. Just 2 or 3 examples to be like, okay, yes, 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 this person knows what they're doing. I understand what they're trying to say and what they're trying to accomplish in these portfolio examples. I want to bring this person in and talk to them. However, I have also come across portfolios that have been shared with me by people on LinkedIn who have maybe 10 to 12 examples that demonstrate a very clear progression and maturity in their BI development. One individual in particular, whose name I'm not going to divulge, if I go back to his to his very first BI projects, honestly, they weren't all that impressive. On their own, that would have been a very poor portfolio, but what I loved about his portfolio is that as you looked through the 12 portfolio examples that he had released on the platform where he was sharing his portfolio, I was just blown away by the contrast between his more recent projects and his earliest projects. I was able to see clear refinement of his design aesthetics, of his data storytelling capabilities, of the maturity of the data visuals that he was presenting as he matured from, just bar chart, bar chart, bar chart, bar chart, to some other more complex data visuals with very clear narratives and talking points about the specific data sets that he was working with. And I found that extremely interesting. This was not a candidate that I was looking to hire. This was a candidate who just asked me to critique their portfolio. And I told him he was doing so much right, and I really, really appreciated tremendously the fact that I was able to see where he started and where he had grown into. So, I think that, if you have 2 or 3 strong examples, fantastic. If you're the kind of person that has a portfolio with like a dozen strong examples, awesome, you're a rock star, you're an overachiever. But honestly, 2 or 3 strong examples is all that I need. Basically, as long as you have some strong examples in your portfolio, and your resume is not full of like 20 fairly amateurish or slapped together or quick turn Power BI projects that just don't look very good, you're probably fine. If your entire portfolio is full of, fairly low level work, you may not be doing yourself any favors by having a lot of work. I think you should definitely be a person to focus on quality over quantity. Take out some of the portfolio pieces that you have if you think your portfolio is somewhat weak, and just dedicate your energy on making 2 or 3 of those examples much more impressive, much more robust. Your portfolio is going to be much stronger with 2 or 3 strong pieces than a dozen mediocre ones. That's a guarantee. And that's all for this video. Thanks so much for tuning into this video about business intelligence resumes. If you are in the process of applying for BI jobs or pivoting careers, I hope that you found some of this information useful. Maybe you got some ideas for some ways that you can refine and improve your own resume. I hope that you find the job that you're looking for. If you end up applying for one of my roles, you've at least got some pointers for how to kind of cheat your way into an interview with me, because I've basically played all of my cards. But anyway, thanks again for tuning into this video. Best of luck to you. I will see you in the next video.